The Christian influence in Texas. Wanted to take a look at the culture war and how it's been playing out in Texas. And some folks are saying, the culture war is over. Where
do those people live?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's over.
We live in like the most liberal city, I would say in Texas, but technically we're surrounded by Texas. We're not in Texas.
Right.
The only reason we let the governor live here is because that's where they built his house,
Yeah.
But I'm pumped.
Anyway, but Texas, is one of the states run primarily by Christian conservatives, and this has been going on a long time, and so you can kind of look at a little bit of what effect that's had for our state, and apply by their fruits ye shall know them, Matthew 7:16, and there is this kind of related to this. There's a paper called Cross-National Correlations of Quantifiable Social Health with Popular Religiosity and Secularism in Prosperous Democracies.
Now, let me see if I'm
tongue.
going to use my powers of deduction to determine why people haven't heard of this study.
Right. The author's name was Gregory S. Paul, and it was written in 2005, and he correlated religious belief with social ills.
Yep.
And I think we can make an even stronger case in Texas that religious belief has led to a lot of problems, and we can see these causal problems with the culture war in Texas. And the culture war is a big thing. There's a lot of different aspects to it. And I may take up other aspects of this culture war thing another time, but today I wanted to talk about the pro-life movement, and the governor Greg Abbott is an alleged advocate of pro-life, and a lot of the legislature is, and it kind of permeates the culture here. And so, how have things worked? Well, a big thing, the first thing you think of in Texas with the pro-life is there's been all sorts of bans on abortions and restrictions on abortions. And allegedly it's to protect human life, and human life is sacred, and all these things. And there's all sorts of laws, like there's a sonogram law that inserts the government between a woman and her doctor, and forces the doctor to show her a sonogram of the fetus. There's a law that fetal remains have to be buried or cremated. There's a law that's recent that eliminates insurance coverage for non-emergency abortions. There's a law that bans dilation and extraction for second trimester abortions. This goes on and on. This is a big thing in this state. And the state funds religiously affiliated crisis pregnancy centers, that give out false and misleading information. And so this is definitely an area where they've made a lot of progress in trying to beat up on women who want to have abortions, and have successfully closed down a lot of the abortion clinics and these sorts of things, or family planning clinics. But children are also at risk, and if you're pro-life and you want to protect children, then presumably you want to protect their well-being. And Texas, unfortunately, has a broken Child Protective Services program. There's been poor funding and oversight, a lot of turnover of the people working there, and it's been a festering problem for years and years. There's plenty of abuse and many deaths, and it's not something that seems to be addressed by the current legislature or any in the recent past. There's a program called CHIP, which funds health insurance for kids, that funding is at risk in Texas. In Texas, we have very liberal gun laws. There's no legislation to protect kids from shooters. Open carry is now legal at universities. And our own UT is home to a famous 1996 sniper incident that having more guns would never have helped, because he was way up on a tower, and he's a very good shooter.
That was not 1996.
1966, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
1966, quite a long time ago. And he was up in a sniper as shooting folks, and there was no way that anybody was going to get him except up close. Yet guns are not allowed at the Texas state capitol because they're very pro-life for their own lives. So if children are sacred and precious, why don't these sane people fix these problems? Mothers are also at risk. Texas has defunded reproductive and preventative health care for at-risk women that has harmed women's health and inhibited the distribution of contraception and caused unintended pregnancies to shoot up. So that seems to be kind of an obvious mistake. Texas has the highest maternal mortality rate in the developed world. And there has been a defunding of the group that studies the issue and is trying to make recommendations to fix it. And of course, mothers are generally the ones taking care of children. So if they're off dying, what's going to happen to those children? You know, these beautiful sacred things. Another aspect of this problem is that teen pregnancy rates in Texas, because of poor sex ed, are very high. 35,000 people or kids a year get pregnant before age 20. That's insane. The Dallas and
I'm not a fan of that statistic, actually.
No.
And not for the same reason that you're probably not.
Oh.
So when we say 35,000 per year get pregnant before 20, I don't think that statistic is particularly fair, because what we care about
is the rate, right?
Well, you can graduate high school, get married, and have been married for a year and a half by the time you're 20, just of your own volition. And I care more about what's happening prior to adulthood, prior to somebody being out on their own.
That's true.
So I think that's still very high. And evidently in Waco, there's nothing else for teenagers to do but go out and spread STDs. So.
Right. Well, and I have a quote. The Dallas and San Antonio areas, for example, had teen pregnancy rates 50 and 40%, respectively, higher than the national average. So Texas is failing pretty clearly. Those same kids who are pregnant get poor support for reproductive care, and teen mothers are generally relegated to a life of poverty as their educations and careers are cut short because child rearing takes priority. In Texas, one cause of this is poor sex education. We focus on abstinence only in Texas, or no education at all, and textbooks focus on contraceptive failure rates, not proper use. On a completely different topic related to pro-life, we've got the death penalty in Texas. Texas death penalty is responsible for 1/3 of the national total of deaths caused by the death penalty. Rick Perry's administration, when he was governor here, executed 279 people. And Texas, ironically, is running out of the drug they used for executions, pentobarbital. And the manufacturer has stopped selling to Texas because they just say, you're using it for unintended purposes. And Texas has resorted to all sorts of backdoor tactics to try to acquire a supplier. And fortunately, we've got a lot of folks kind of monitoring that and making sure that they do what they do legally. Nationally, a large number of death penalty convictions have been overturned with new evidence, and so you can't just say that these are not innocent lives necessarily. So in conclusion, this sanctity of life argument is nothing more than propaganda, and cynically, there's this phrase that Christians seem to be pro-life until birth. When they don't care anymore. More clearly, I think they're pro-birth for pro-births that they don't have to pay for. That seems to be really what it is, because all of the financial help for folks that are making children are not there. And my answer is religions control reproduction because there's no God who can create tithers, and those religions would dry up without those tithers. So Christian-based pro-life policies in Texas are fraudulent, and they are a proven failure, and that's a failure of Christianity.
All right. And for those who don't know what tithers are, that's a donation. Essentially, tithing is this, you're constantly giving 10, 15, 20% of your income on a regular basis. It's not just you went in and put $1 in
the origin of the word is tenth, 1/10. Yeah.
And, I'm gonna interject some words of caution. Okay. Much the same way that I don't like that statistic, I like honest, accurate arguments. I am frustrated by the amount of hyperbole. And I recognize that ironically I made some snarky comments afterwards, but that wasn't meant to be an argument, it was humor. So, yet another school shooting has happened.
Today?
No, in the past week.
Okay. They're having about, the rate is about one a week.
No, it's not. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. Because I could sit here and rant about how, the religious right and ultra-conservatives and the gun lobby just don't seem to want to care to do anything. What we first hear every time is thoughts and prayers. And, thoughts and prayers and a $20 bill will get me a lap dance. Thoughts and prayers do nothing. There's no demonstration of effectiveness. And I understand from somebody who genuinely thinks that they care when something like this happens, they offer up their thoughts and prayers. Oh, we're praying for the victims and the families of the victims. You can give your thoughts and prayers as long as you also do something. If you don't do anything other than offer thoughts and prayers, shut the fuck up, because you are not helping. I understand how frustrating it must feel to think that there's nothing you can do. But offering up thoughts and prayers has been proven ineffective because it's offered up every single time we have something like this, and it doesn't change. Now, after having beat up on the thoughts and prayers crowd, let me beat up on the other crowd.
Okay.
The crowd of people who are exaggerating statistics and engaging in hyperbole. I don't know how many times in the past week I saw that this was the 17th or 18th school shooting in 2018. No, it wasn't. It wasn't even close. You can go to Snopes and find out that depending on what statistics you actually use, there were somewhere between 5 or 7, and really only 2 that fit the public perception of, oh my gosh, there was another school shooting where somebody went in and shot a bunch of people. If you took a look at the list of their 17 or 18 in 2018, whatever it was, you've got, somebody unrelated to the school after hours who fired a gun on school property, because that's what they're counting. And this, or in some other a basketball game dispute, somebody fired a gun. Those things are bad and they're different. And there's no good reason to exaggerate because one is too many. And that's the point that you have to make, and that's the point that you have to drive home. There's no good reason to exaggerate, because I'll tell you exactly what happens when we misrepresent the facts. You get some jackass like Ben Shapiro putting out a video talking about how the reactionary left is exaggerating the problem and it's really not as bad as anybody thinks, and that gives people a reason to continue doing absolutely nothing about it. So make good arguments and use good statistics, because it should be easy to say this should not happen. And not only does it not happen with the frequency in other countries that it does here, it doesn't happen at all in some of them. We can have reasonable discussions about how we're going to deal with guns and bullets and all these other stuff. But if one side is pretending that it doesn't happen and then offering up thoughts and prayers and posting their T-shirt of the student asking God why he didn't stop the shooting and God replying that he's not allowed in schools, which, by the way, that's a flat admission from them that their God isn't everywhere and can be overpowered by legislation, except that didn't happen either, because there's no legislation banning a God from a school or banning prayer from a school. It's a complete and utter misrepresentation. But they want to throw out thoughts and prayers in their T-shirts, and then nothing gets done, and we come back to this over and over again. And the people on the other side are like, oh my gosh, this is the biggest problem ever, and the world is just getting worse, and it's going to hell in a handbasket. No, it's not. The prevalence for the rate for these things is actually declining. We live in the best of all possible times. Read Steven Pinker's book, Better Angels, Raw Nature, or even better, go read his recent Wall Street Journal article that offers statistics showing that the world has improved in almost every measure for almost every person on the planet. And that puts perspective on it, not so that we can pretend there's no problem, but so that we can accurately assess what the problem is, measure the risks and rewards, and figure out the best course of action to try to prevent this from happening. And I'm not going to claim that I know what it is, and I'm not interested in getting into a debate about it, in the course of this particular show. I want people to argue honestly. I hate bad arguments, and I hate them most when they're coming from the side that should be right and easily right. One is too many. That's all you need to say. On that note.
Amen, Brother Matt.
Yes. It is Sunday, and I do have a background of, being preachy.
No, that's good stuff. I agree, and
really
I appreciate when you call me out on my mistakes.
Well,
because I learn from them.
It's not like I didn't make I made a mistake immediately after calling you out on your mistake. Okay. So Welcome to the Mistake Show.
Yeah, we're all fallible.
We are godless heathens who are willing to acknowledge that we don't know, and we're also willing to acknowledge that we can make mistakes.